Hello and welcome to Renovation Uncovered, a series of podcasts from Renovation Underwriting. Think of us as your renovation survival guide. In this podcast series, we'll journey through your property renovation from concept to completion. This episode is all about claims.
Nowhere in the contract did it say destroy half the house, but hey, life's full of surprises.
That's the voice of James Hobby. His is a harrowing tale of why you must have proper renovation insurance in place before you start your project. This episode is called Catastrophe Claims.
Hello, my name is Cara Rayner. I am the claims manager at Renovation Underwriting. So just a little bit about myself and my background. I studied a 3-year degree in business management, majoring in finance. My first position in insurance was in underwriting in 1990. I then went straight to recoveries, to claims, to a broker consultant, and at the age of 25, I became the youngest branch manager for Aegis Insurance and the first woman in management in the company too. I've always gravitated towards claims, as this is where I feel I can best apply my caring and empathetic nature into the work that I do every day.
So that's Cara, who's our expert guide when it comes to renovation insurance claims. My first question for her was about the sorts of claims she sees in renovation projects.
Okay, there are 3 main areas on the renovation projects where we get our claims. The first is damage to the contract works. The contract works are things like your structures, the materials, and fittings that are being added to your existing property. Then we have damage to the existing structures. This is obviously self-explanatory. It's the structure that's there already. And then we have liability claims, and that's damage or injury to another party, such as your neighbor, or a third party, such as a person, as a result of the renovation project. A lot of people incorrectly assume that your home insurer will cover the property when renovations are being undertaken. But most home insurers actually tend not to cover the property while it's been renovated. So this just highlights the importance of being well informed and adequately insured prior to the commencement of a renovation project.
So now we know the causes of claims, I wanted to hear about catastrophe claims. It's not a phrase I'd ever heard before.
So if we look at the definition of a catastrophe, it is an event causing great and usually sudden damage or suffering. The word that I'd like you to take note of there is the word sudden, because we'll be bringing that up a little bit later. So the main reasons why the cost would be so high would be something like a fire, especially if the renovation project is near completion and a vast majority of the contract works have already been carried out. You can imagine a fire ripping through your existing structure and the contract works and the amount of damage that this will cause. The second main one where we see high costs is water damage claim, and specifically burst pipes. They often lead to several levels of the property being damaged as the water tends to run downwards, and it covers a wide area of the property, especially if it is left undetected for a significant amount of time. So your fire and water claims can extend over both the contract works as well as the existing structure, and even affecting your neighbouring properties as well. So you can imagine it has a significant impact on the cost of the claim.
And that is why claims costs can be so high. A fire spreading across your new extension or project then gets into your existing home and then maybe into your neighbours' homes. But there are other things that can push that claim value up and up and up as well.
The third one is your liability, which are your party wall claims, and this is damage to the neighbouring properties due to the contract works. It could be public liability, which is more your personal injury claims, and I'm going to be giving an example of that a little bit later on. The other one is collapse. Obviously, if you have a ceiling collapse or a partial collapse of the structure, will cause significant damage. And the last one is accidental damage. There we see quite a variation in cost depending on the impact it has on the renovation project and obviously how big the accidental damage is. You can see that these are all sudden and unforeseen. And remember, I asked you to remember that word sudden, which comes in catastrophe. This is where it's important to realize it's sudden, unforeseen, and may lead to unintended repairs, which often results in the halt of your contract works. And that is the last thing you want.
I was curious to know what claims end up at the highest value. What are the worst case scenarios?
The first one will most definitely be fire, especially as a renovation project nears completion and a vast majority of your contract works have already been carried out. Here we're not just looking at fire damage, we're looking at smoke damage. We're also looking at the fire brigades coming out and having to put the fire out, which results in a lot of water damage as well to the property. The second one will have to be water damage and specifically burst pipes. This often leads to several levels of the property being damaged at the same time, and it covers a wide area if left undetected for a significant amount of time. And if you think of water damage, you think your carpets get wet. But it's not just that. It gets into the walls, it gets underneath the carpets, it gets into the floorboards. It pretty much gets everywhere into your existing structure and into the contract works and affects many areas of your property. So as I mentioned with the fire claim above and also with the water claims, they can extend over both the contract works, the existing structure, and even affect neighbouring properties. And I say properties because you can often have more than one neighbour. So this significantly impacts the cost of the claim.
So we've talked a lot about fire and water damage and smoke damage and damage to your neighbours, but what else could leave you out of pocket? What other things are there to think about?
Right, so this is a knock-on effects for the renovator or the policyholder. We're looking at unbudgeted costs of repairs. We're looking at damage to the works which have already been completed. We're looking at extended alternative accommodation. So if you think about a family of 4 living in an upmarket London-based home where they need to remain close to the schools, they need to remain close to work or other commitments that they have, the alternative accommodation costs can be unimaginably high when you consider the weekly or monthly rental of a home, which must meet all the family's needs and requirements. Increased interest payments from any short-term borrowing, which is often what the policyholder needs in order to carry out the renovation project. In real-life terms, you are dealing with all of this on top of maintaining a full-time job, which often involves periods of travel. Your children are still in school, and you have other life commitments. So the physical and emotional toll can be very high, and certainly throws a spanner into the works. Excuse the pun. I think this will be a very good place to listen to a project that went horribly wrong, where the insurers were not interested in paying out the claim, but the policyholder had committed to the renovation project. I will let James Hobby do the talking.
The house had an existing dormer, which is a room in the roof, and we wanted to extend it and to get building regulations. So we got planning permission, and then we commissioned a builder to do the work. The project cost was, unbelievably, £38,000. The day the house collapsed was the 6th of August 2020. My wife and I were on holiday in a holiday home in North Wales. 9:30 in the morning on that day, the phone rang, a number we didn't recognise. Policeman had said, "Are you Mr. Hobby?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Your house has collapsed. 2 men are trapped in the rubble, but they're screaming, so we take that as good news." And I'm like, "Good news? How could that be good news?" And then the line went dead. When the dormer was being done, the builder decided to take the whole roof off and replace the roof. But he didn't put in props for the party wall, that's the wall adjoining us and our neighbours, the gable, which is the front triangle, and the chimney. By not propping it with wooden props or steel props, he turned those structures into what the engineer called freestanding structures, and they were obviously liable to collapse. It was the chimney pot and the chimney stack collapsing through into the first floor that caused all the damage. And that led to pretty catastrophic losses on our part and a catastrophic accident that left people injured, left the house destroyed. When we engaged the builder, one of the first things we did was talk about insurance, and he showed us his Direct Line tradesman's insurance certificate. It was Direct Line business to business. A day after the accident, we actually called Direct Line, who confirmed that there was a policy in place and confirmed the amounts of liability cover that were there. And so I just assumed, well, he's covered. And 2 days after the accident, Direct Line actually sent along their loss adjuster. Anyway, after that, Direct Line effectively went into radio silence for 6 months. They did what insurers call reserving their position. So they reserved their position for 6 months or refused to make any comment. They said they were investigating.
So after listening to James' hobby, I hope it reinforces the importance of having the correct insurance in place before you start a renovation project, and also the consequences that he now faces because of those decisions.
I think you'll agree that James' hobby story is truly the stuff of nightmares. Whilst I had Cara, I wanted to pick her brain on the legal responsibilities that I have as a renovator during my renovation project.
You could be duty-bound to control the project insurance by your JCT contract, so you need to stay in control of the insurance at all times. Under the Party Wall Act, you are responsible for damage to the third-party properties, and as I mentioned before, I always use the word properties because you often have more than one neighbour, and more than one neighbour is affected as a result of your contract works. When dealing with self-managed projects and paying subcontractors directly, you could be in line for personal injury claims and even HSE prosecution.
Look, the last thing we want to do is put anyone off taking a project on, but please make sure you've got proper cover in place before even a screwdriver is lifted. And if you are ready to get going, don't forget that the experts are with you every step of the way.
We at Renovation Underwriting take our responsibility to our policyholders very seriously. Claims are how we are judged, both morally and in actuality. Being fair and efficient is what you can expect from us and from those that we operate alongside.
The voice of Cara Rayner, Claims Manager at Renovation Underwriting, rounding off this episode of Renovation Uncovered. Please do check out the other episodes in this series, and you'll also find a whole host of useful articles to read on the website too, renovationunderwriting.com.